We had a lot of economic news this week. We had jobs numbers and we had Fed results, of course. Let's start with the jobs numbers because they came in, I think, at least relatively strong. How did you interpret them?
I saw it the same way. Look, the population only grows by about 50,000 adults a month. So anytime you have 250,000 jobs, you're growing at a rate that you're not going to be ultimately able to sustain. It shows that still the economy is looking quite strong, no recession soon. You saw wages tick up. So the good news is economy looking robust. The bad news is not much evidence of inflation restraint yet in train.
Of course, when Jay Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, spoke earlier on Wednesday, he didn't know what those jobs numbers were, I don't believe. At the same time, what he said anticipated just what you just said, is that inflation continues, they're going to have to keep hiking. I assume you thought what they did made sense.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of bouncing around immediately after the statement, but after Chairman Powell's press conference, I thought the necessary and right signal has been sent that the Fed is determined to stay the course with respect to inflation, that a sensible judgment of where the terminal rate, how high Fed funds will ultimately have to go, has gone up given the strong inflation numbers, the strong employment numbers that we've seen, and that the Fed is determined. So I thought those were very much the right kind of signals for the Fed to send, and I think it's appropriate. I think we are starting to get some little suggestion in the data. We don't know yet, and we always have to remember about lags, that the effect of interest rates on slowing the economy might in toto be somewhat less than many people supposed. And if that's right, I think it's going to be pressure for interest rates to be pushed up further in order to get done the necessary inflation restriction. So I'm moving upwards my view on the possibilities for the terminal rate. It's not what I would expect, but it would not surprise me if the terminal rate reached 6 or more. And I think the Fed has to be noticing that there's been started to be some upwards moves in inflation expectations, albeit from low levels. And that's got to be a source of concern for them as well.
Larry, we're also beginning to get some suggestions, including even by some economists like Mark Zandi, that in fact the real cause of the inflation is more a matter of supply rather than demand. And because of that, it's not going to be really effective to just try to curtail demand through increased rates. And therefore, by beginning of next year, maybe they should start cutting back. What do you make of that suggestion?
I have to respectfully say that I can't really see a lot of logic in the views that Zandi and those like him are expressing. Look, the basic fact is that the way you tell a supply shock from a demand shock, both of them raise prices, but when there's a supply shock, quantity falls. When there's a demand shock, output is strong, and output has been very strong. Employment has been very strong. The people who talk about supply shocks, it's really just the last readout of Team Transitory. First, it was a story about COVID ending quickly. Then it was a story about COVID ending slowly. It keeps bouncing around what the story is. We've still got high core inflation, and gasoline prices were mostly down for a period of more than 3 months. So I don't hear the story. Very simple ways of looking at the data. Look at what's happening to nominal GDP. total dollar volume of GDP. If that's going up rapidly, that tells you that demand is going up strongly.
Larry, another issue that it's rearing its head, you've seen this issue before, and that's the debt ceiling up in Congress, because we're going to be pushing up against it sometime in the new year, maybe not even too far into the new year. We're now seeing some talk on Capitol Hill that perhaps, particularly Republicans, if they come into power, will actually hold that hostage to get some other changes they want, particularly in things like entitlements. What's your experience with the debt ceiling? What should we be doing?
There are a lot of bad ideas in American politics, but I think it's close to the worst idea in American politics that we should hold hostage the creditworthiness of the country, threatening to default for the first time in 250 years. And the ransom that people want is taking Social Security benefits away from retirees, not a single one of whom gets more than $40,000 from Social Security. It is almost impossible to see a worse idea, either in terms of the hostage taking or the desired ransom. The right thing to do is for us to raise that debt ceiling for a long time so it won't be a political football. And I hope that as many responsible Americans as possible can say, look, yes, I am for entitlement reform. I am for looking at the long run deficit picture, but hostage taking to cut Social Security is wrong. And I hope some of the business leaders who watch this show, whose PACs are giving money to support the people who are advocating that, will convey that as responsible financial leaders, they know that their companies and all our fellow citizens have a stake in the United States not playing games of chicken with our country's creditworthiness.
One more here, an important argument in the Supreme Court this week on affirmative action. You've dealt with that not just as an economist, but also as president of Harvard. What is the role of affirmative action in the United States within the economy?
Look, I was pleased to sign the brief that was provided on the basis of many universities the last time affirmative action was in the Supreme Court. And fortunately, at that time, affirmative action was upheld. Who knows what will happen this time. But I'll tell you, David, I think what's most profoundly important for fairness in our country is not the admissions policies of a few dozen elite institutions. What's most important is the achievement and the achievement of our minority citizens, and the educational achievement statistics that have come in from COVID are catastrophic. They represent a 25-year fallback in progress we had been making at a time when a math-smart, analytics-smart workforce has never been more important to compete with China. And this ought to be our national preoccupation, to make sure that every kid learns everything that they can. And, you know, more people are talking about the latest poll than are talking about these test results that are really showing millions of kids are being left badly behind in an age that's all about knowledge.